Fernando Alonso qualified 18th for the Dutch Grand Prix. He crossed the line 9th, 9 places, in a car that had spent most of this season scrapping with Cadillac for last place.
Alonso just had one of his best drives in years. 18th on the grid, 9th at the flag. And here's the weird part. It wasn't even his fastest lap that got him there. The lap only ranked 14th on the day.
Normally that's the whole headline right there. Remarkable recovery drive. Well done, Fernando. Next race. Except when you go and check the timing sheets.
So what actually happened out there? Stick around because we're going to break down every number behind it. Tyres, sectors, even the gap to his own teammate. And if this kind of data first breakdown is your thing, subscribe now because this is exactly what we do every race weekend.
His fastest lap of the entire race wasn't even top 10. It ranked 14th. 14th fastest lap, 9th place finish. Those two numbers don't sit comfortably next to each other, and that's really the whole reason this video exists. So, was it the tyres, the car, or was this just Alonso doing what Alonso does when you finally hand him something halfway competitive? The honest answer is a bit of all three, but if you had to point at one single number that explains most of what happened at Zandvoort, it's this one. 32 laps on the soft tyre at a track where the rest of the grid was averaging 17. We're going to spend the next few minutes walking through why that stint mattered so much, what it took for Alonso to actually pull it off, how it connects to his gap over Stroll and to the sector data everyone's been arguing about this week. And by the end, you'll understand exactly how a driver with the 14th quickest lap of the day ended up 9th. First, a bit of context, because a P9 means something different depending on where you're starting from. Aston Martin's year up to this point had been rough in a fairly specific way. Not just slow, but unreliable with it. 4 retirements for Alonso before the summer break, 7 for Stroll. There were weekends this season where simply finishing the race would have counted as a result. Their only point going into the break came at Monaco, and even that one arrived with a bit of an asterisk, because several rivals collected pit lane speeding penalties that day and effectively gifted Alonso a result his own pace hadn't really earned. For most of the year, there simply wasn't a result worth reacting to. What changed was Hungary. Aston Martin turned up with 16 separate upgrade pieces in one go, a genuinely large package, the kind teams usually spread out across several race weekends rather than dumping all at once. Zandvoort brought 5 more parts on top of that, plus the very first upgrade to the Honda power unit all season. Alonso doesn't tend to praise his own equipment unless he means it, and he called the step incredible. His numbers backed the word up better than the word did on its own. In Budapest, we made it to Q2, and here we were just 1/10 away, he said after Saturday's session. Piastri was 1.3 seconds ahead of us. Before, we had an average gap of 4.5 seconds to the best, so we've improved by 3 seconds over 2 races. Go from 4.5 seconds down to 1/10 in 2 weekends. And you're not talking about a driver finding a bit extra in himself. You're talking about a materially different car. Which is what makes the actual race strategy a little counterintuitive. A car that had just clawed back most of a 5-second deficit should, in theory, have been settling into a calm, uneventful points weekend, not tearing up its own plan halfway through Sunday. But that's what happened, and Alonso explained why afterward in enough detail that it's better to just let him say it rather than paraphrase it badly.
Was it the tyres, the car, or just Alonso being Alonso?
That was not the plan, he said. I think the plan was 2 stops and to go more conventional, but we need to sometimes deviate a little bit from what is the normal things, as when we are in traffic we cannot use our potential. We were faster in the corners than the people in front of us, we were slower on the straights, and we were stuck behind. There's a lot packed into that one answer. Good through the corners, presumably thanks to those 16 chassis and aero pieces from Hungary. Still down on straight line speed, presumably the Honda side of the equation. Now picture what that combination actually does to a driver stuck in traffic. He's faster than the car ahead through every single corner on the lap, closes the gap, and then loses every bit of it back on the following straight because there's nowhere to convert that closing speed into an actual pass. Repeat that for 10 laps and you've burned a stint's worth of tyre life without gaining a position. A conventional 2-stop plan, fresh rubber roughly every 20 laps, box on schedule, was quietly working against him in that scenario. It kept dropping him back into someone's dirty air right when his cornering advantage was at its most useful. So the team flipped the logic. Rather than chase tyre freshness on a fixed schedule, they chased clean track. one stop instead of two. Get Alonso out into space where his corner speed could actually do something, and then simply ask more of the tyres than they're usually asked to give. That's the door the 32 laps walk through. Across the whole field at Zandvoort, the average soft tyre stint ran 17 laps before the drop-off became too costly to ignore. Degradation on that compound was sitting around 1.5 per lap, which adds up fast once you're 20 laps deep. Alonso stretched his soft stint to 32, almost double what everybody else managed. He then switched onto the hard tyre and ran that for 37 laps, against a field average of 24. Worth noting, the hard compound was genuinely the fastest tyre on track that day by median pace, and the lowest degrading of the three. So some of that second number is the tyre being cooperative rather than pure heroics. Even granting that, 13 laps beyond what anyone else squeezed from the hard is still well outside normal. It's the soft stint that's harder to hand off to the tyre itself, because Zandvoort isn't exactly gentle to a soft compound in the first place. The circuit's two banked corners, turn 3 and the final corner before the pit straight, keep the car leaned over hard enough that the front left tyre never really gets a break the way it would through a flat corner. There's no moment of relief built into the layout. A tyre already working overtime from the banking, pushed to nearly double its usual life, doesn't survive because conditions happen to be kind that day. It survives because a driver is consciously backing off his own pace, corner after corner, protecting the surface instead of attacking the clock, and accepting a slower lap now in exchange for not needing to pit again 15 laps sooner than planned. Which actually explains that 14th fastest lap number from earlier, rather than working against it. A driver managing a tyre that carefully, for that long, is never going to set the outright fastest lap of the afternoon. He's not trying to. Alonso's best lap of the whole Grand Prix came in at 1 minute 16.946, good for 14th on the timesheet, and he still finished a full lap down on race winner Lando Norris. None of that undercuts what happened. It's basically the fingerprint of exactly the kind of race he ran. 72 laps built around stretching tyre life, rather than 72 laps built around one lap pace. Now, strategy alone doesn't prove much about the driver specifically, because in theory, a strong enough plan can flatter anyone sitting in the car. The cleanest way to separate the two is to look at the one person who had the exact same equipment all weekend, his own teammate. Stroll ran the identical chassis, the identical engine, the same tyre compounds available. It's not a flawless comparison. It can't tell you how either of them would have fared in a different car, and it doesn't capture pure single lap qualifying speed, only race pace. But across every lap where both drivers produced a genuinely comparable clean time, Alonso was quicker by 0.108 seconds a lap. Say that number out loud on its own, and it barely registers. Stack it across the 36 laps where the comparison is actually fair in identical machinery, and it stops being a rounding error. That's a real gap, and the car isn't the variable that explains it, because the car was the same for both of them.
And if this is what Aston Martin can do right now, half broken and still learning the new package, what happens when they actually get it right?